Today I decided to give you guys my top 10 PlayStation 4 games. This is pretty much the last system that I have to rank at the time being, mostly because the other systems either don't have 10 games that really stick out to me, or the system is still ongoing, such as the PS5 and Series X and Switch. But since the PS4 is more or less at the end of its lifespan, I figured what better time to give you guys a ranking in the top 10 games for the system. So without further ado, let's get started. Coming in at number 10 is kind of a game that might surprise many, and that's Dead Rising 4, Frank's Big Package. This is just the ultimate edition of the game. I don't have a case for this one, just kind of a generic empty case, but I actually rather enjoy Dead Rising 4 despite its kind of negative reception that it got upon its release. But considering the fact that 4 was a next-gen exclusive, it just barely made this list, but I do think it's deserving of a spot. While it does lack some of the polish of the first three games, it is bigger and crazier and over the top, more so than the first three games in the series. It's a damn good continuation, and I really like playing as Frank West again. His personality is a little bit different this time around. People even call him Hank East. But if you get past a slightly different character interpretation and some, glitches here and there and a few unpolished segments, you're going to find yourself enjoying a really fun zombie title. Up next, we have the remake of Shadow of the Colossus. This is a game originally released for PS2 and then re-released on the PS3 in the ICO Shadow of Colossus collection and then fully remastered for the PS4. This is the definitive version of this game. You basically play as this character. You try to save this girl who's been cursed. You go to this faraway land and fight these giant colossi in a sacrificial attempt to bring her back to life. It's a very poignant, poetic, and artful game. Probably the most artsy game that I have on the system. And it's just a magnificent experience. If you played it on the PS2 and PS3 and are a bit weary about getting the PS4 version, go ahead and do it. It really is worth the upgrade. Seeing these creatures in beautiful high def on the big screen is amazing. This is just the definitive version of the game, and every re-release of this game is bigger and better than the previous. No complaints here. A great addition, and one that I very much recommend. Up next, we have Deus Ex: Mankind Divided. This is actually the final installment of the series released thus far, and I've always loved the Deus Ex series. My favorite is still probably the original, with the third game coming in a close second, but this one does come in a close third. It is better than 2, and out of the 4 games, while it's not my favorite, it is a great improvement. If you love cyberpunk, espionage, tactical action, you're going to love this game. Great commentary on the society and the way machinery and technology is taking over, as well as a fascinating story. This is just the complete package for any cyberpunk fan. If you love Blade Runner or movies like that, you're going to love this game. Up next, we have a game that was initially released on the PS3, and I even have the PS5 version here, but I mostly played it on the 4, and that's where it got the most improvements. I've always enjoyed the Grand Theft Auto series, and I'm not sure what my favorite of the series is, but 5 is definitely a contender for that spot. I just love the characters this time around. Trevor is a nut, and Michael is just this man going through his midlife crisis, and Franklin is pretty much the straight man keeping these two crazy guys together. And it all works very well. If you've never played any of the Grand Theft Auto games before this, I recommend definitely jumping in here. The most recent installment is the most easily accessible, with the most fun gameplay, and like I said, an amazing story to wrap it all together. You're going to have a good time, and it's really hard not to recommend Grand Theft Auto 5. I'm very much looking forward to 6, but until then, we have this great gem of a game to hold us over. Up next is a game that I don't own a physical copy of anymore, but I still do have the game, and that is Spider-Man PS4. Which is included with this Miles Morales Special Edition. I very much really loved this PS4 version of Spider-Man, and I think that it's one of the best games that was ever released on the system, and one of my favorite Spider-Man games. More or less a contemporary retelling of the Spider-Man story, only this time there's other characters like Miles Morales along for the ride. Amazing whip swinging around the city as Spider-Man, and some really great characters and villains along the way. I very much recommend the game. Whether you get on the PS5 or the PS4, you can't go wrong with the original Spider-Man. I think it's better than Miles Morales, and I think it's better than Spider-Man 2. The best of the current Spider-Man trilogy. Up next, another game that I don't own a physical copy of at the moment, and that's Batman Arkham Knight. I'll just hold up Return to Arkham, which is another great PS4 game. But I really much do enjoy the Arkham series, and I think that all of them, even Arkham Origins, are really great games. Arkham Knight, however, added something to the game that the first three didn't have, and that was the Batmobile. Going around the city in this fucking tank is just amazing. I really do enjoy the combat in the game as well, and the story does wrap things up very nicely. It's a shame that they messed up this storyline so much with the new Suicide Squad game, which apparently is just abysmal. But I say just ignore that crap and stick with the original four Arkham games. You're going to have a good time. And the best of it is probably still City, but a close second would have to be Arkham Knight. Up next, we have one of the best games Rockstar ever made, and that's Red Dead Redemption 2. Taking place before the other two games, even though it's called Part 2, this prequel basically shows the story of Arthur Morgan as he tries to help his gang out, all the while robbing, stealing, killing, or being a good guy, depending on how you play the game. It's basically a brutal look at the Old West. It's one that I very much enjoy. But if you want a great free roam Western game, nothing else beats it. I like the first Red Dead Redemption, but this one just blows it out the water. And with an amazing story, great gore and visuals, it's hard to beat this game. Coming in at number 3 is Metal Gear Solid 5. That includes Ground Zeroes and The Phantom Pain. I adore the Metal Gear Solid franchise, and this was the last game released under Hideo Kojima's watch. This is more or less the conclusion of the Big Boss storyline of Metal Gear Solid. There is a little bit of holes in the story because the game was rushed out and over budget, so Hideo didn't really get to delve into as much of the backstory as he would have liked. But what we get here is still pretty great. Amazing missions, really great graphics for the time. Even though it was released on the 360 and PS3 as well, it is still a beautiful game. Fun gameplay, amazing stealth, two big open 3D world maps, including Africa and Afghanistan. There's just nothing not to like about this game. Both of them are really fun. Even Ground Zeroes, which is more or less just a glorified demo, is probably the best demo that I've ever played in my life. You really have to love the Metal Gear games. And if we never get another one by Hideo Kojima, which is likely not to happen thanks to the whole rights issue with him and Konami, this is still a great ending to that saga, and one I very much enjoy. I'm highly looking forward to the remake of Metal Gear Solid 3, but until then, we have these two great games to keep us entertained. And at number 2, it's kind of a cheat, but I'm going to just put all 3 in one, and that's the Hitman World of Assassination trilogy. While this is 3 separate games, they're basically one big game. It's not really 3 different games, they just separated them by release, each containing about 6 missions, with 2 having 8. This is a really fun series of games. 4 did make it to the PS5, but I still played it the most on the 4, and since it was initially released on there, I'm going to count it as a PS4 game. This is a great trilogy, with 3 being the best. Each one is improvement on the previous, and it's just so damn fun. If you want to have a good time and play a great stealth game, I highly recommend Hitman. I like Metal Gear overall as a series a little bit more, I think, but this game just edges out the Phantom Pain just ever so slightly and creates an amazing trilogy that makes one great big package of a game. Probably my second favorite Hitman, just behind Blood Money, but it is so damn close, and I recommend this to anyone who wants to have a good time in the stealth action genre. But my number 1 PS4 game would still have to be Resident Evil 2. I adore Resident Evil 2. This is the best example of the perfect remake. Out of every remake they've ever made for video games, this has to be my favorite. Taking everything about the game, the first game, which is still amazing even to this day, and just upping the ante to 10. This takes the dial and pumps it up to 11, just like this is Spinal Tap. Very fun, just great survival horror, and it's the best Resident Evil game I think they've ever made, and the best PS4 game, in my opinion. The graphics for this game are beautiful. The story is amazingly retold from the original. The gameplay is top-notch. You can't go wrong with Resident Evil 2. It actually took me a long time to get into this game, and I actually held off buying it for a while because I just didn't see the point of remaking a classic. But thankfully, I don't have that mindset anymore, and this blows the original out the water. And if you have yourself a PS4 or an Xbox One, you have to own this game. It is required. Buy this damn game. Here we go. I figure I'd give you guys a few honorable mentions. First and foremost, we have Resident Evil 7 Biohazard. It almost made the list, and I very much do enjoy this game, but it's not quite as good as 2 or even 8, but I do play 8 more on the 5, so I figured I'd throw 7 on this list. A very fun revamp of the Resident Evil series, and a fun first-person experience, and one that's really creepy. The Last of Us Remastered. I know this is The Last of Us Part 2, but I don't physically own Remastered anymore because I decided to upgrade to Last of Us Part 1, but get The Last of Us Remastered. It's a great game if you do have a PS4. But if you don't have PS4 and you have the 5, get Part 1. But as long as you have some version of the first game, you're going to have a great time. Kingdom Hearts 3. This series has had its ups and downs, but I actually very much did enjoy the third game. And I think it's a fun conclusion, at least at this point of the series. And hopefully one day we do get a proper Kingdom Hearts 4. Until that time, this is a great combination of Final Fantasy and Disney, and one that I very much recommend. And speaking of Final Fantasy, I also recommend Final Fantasy 15. Get the Royal Edition if you can. It has the most content. This is a great game and one of the best in the Final Fantasy franchise, and one that I very much enjoy. If you haven't played any Final Fantasy games, you can just jump right in because they're not really connected chronologically. Well, that's my ranking. The PS4 was a great system, and I think that it probably will have a great legacy going forward. I think it was a much better success than the PS3, which was kind of wonky in its start, but did finish strong. I know that systems come and go, and the PS4 is far from my favorite, but it was a pretty damn good PlayStation system. Far from the worst, but not their best either. A good outing altogether. If you have PS5, all PS4 games are backwards compatible, and I do recommend getting all of them if you haven't played them. Sorry for all the background noise in this video, but these two lovebirds just wanted to be heard. Thanks for your patience, and have a good one.